A few days later in hell, Hyunwoo was doing some pull-ups. After doing 150, he dropped down from the bar. His strength level cap increased, but Hyunwoo was disappointed in himself. Just that light workout burnt him out. He would have been able to do more if he wasn't in hell. And while laying there exhausted from the pull-ups, he questioned how long he had spent in hell. A prompt popped up informing him that he had 18 hours and 15 minutes until he was assigned his next quest. Hyunwoo was getting used to hell after coming back and forth a few times. When he was in hell, time also passed in the real world, and the time left for the next quest moved the same as the real world. The only problem is that his location changed every time he returned from hell. He got the hang of everything else, but he just couldn't understand why his location had to change every time he returned from hell. He opened his status window and checked the skill he received earlier, Battle Helper. He learned that the skill optimized his accuracy by controlling his movements and also helping him make judgments by predicting the enemy's movements. If the skill were to be in a game, it would be an illegal cheat, something a hacker would use. Getting a cheat skill like Battle Helper made Hyunwoo realize that he wouldn't be able to survive in hell without some cheat skills or plot armor. He approached a punching bag, and before he could even throw a punch, the skill Battle Helper activated. As he was throwing punches, something was weird. It felt like he was automatically focusing his punches on one area. And finally, after a few more punches, the punching bag was destroyed. With this, Hyunwoo finally understood the functions of the skill Battle Helper. He was then assigned the new quest, A Beginner's Friend, and his objective is to kill 5 beginner scarecrows. However, Hyunwoo got angry. He was already level 7, and the system decided to give him a beginner's quest now. And on top of that, he didn't recall seeing any scarecrows during his time in hell, but he needed to increase his level fast, so he wore his clothes and moved out to find some scarecrows. He followed the crystal moss and found stairs leading down to a basement of a building that had been torn apart. He made his way down the stairs and found some creepy-looking robots. The appearance of the robots scared Hyunwoo, and he wondered why the creator of the robots couldn't have made them look nice. The system brought up the robots' information, and Hyunwoo learned that the robots were the scarecrows he was looking for, but he was shocked to see that there were question marks next to the scarecrows' levels. A shiver ran down Hyunwoo's spine after the thought of all the scarecrows suddenly coming to life came to mind. He picked up debris and hid behind it. Then, he took out a hell dart from his inventory and threw it at one of the scarecrows. The scarecrow didn't move after getting hit with the hell dart, so Hyunwoo ran in thinking it would be an easy win. He threw a punch, and to his surprise, even though he threw the punch with all of his might, it didn't feel like he hit anything. The scarecrow suddenly turned on, recognizing Hyunwoo as an opponent, and activated sparring level 1. Hyunwoo quickly realized that the scarecrows would adjust to match his level, and he protested to the system for not letting him know about the scarecrows beforehand. The scarecrows didn't care about his protest and attacked. Luckily, they were slower than the goblin that tried to kill him previously, so he was able to dodge. If you are level 7 in the real world, you would be treated like a bodyguard or a soldier with 5 years of experience. But in hell, he was being treated like a beginner. This angered him, and he activated the skill Battle Helper to deal with the scarecrows. However, he was quickly surrounded by the scarecrows. One of the scarecrows goes in for an attack. Hyunwoo dodged and countered, but this created an opening for one of the scarecrows to put Hyunwoo in a headlock. After struggling for a while, he managed to free himself and land a solid punch on the scarecrow's face. This triggered them to activate sparring level 2. 4 scarecrows immobilized Hyunwoo, and the other one proceeded to use him as a punching bag. As he was being used as a punching bag, his body's solidarity increased, hemorrhage resistance increased, and his pain resistance also increased. The scarecrows left him with less than 10% of his health left, and he started regenerating thanks to the title Last Man Standing. Hyunwoo started to question if he should run away from the scarecrows, but he hadn't landed a single good hit on the scarecrows, and his pride wouldn't allow him to run. Since the scarecrows were using martial arts, he took out a heinous club that had been strengthened out of his inventory to turn the tides of the battle. He rushed in and managed to break the hand of one of the scarecrows. Suddenly, the scarecrows also equipped their weapons, and the tide of the battle was no longer in Hyunwoo's favor. Hyunwoo died and returned back to the scarecrows and continued his fight. This time, he didn't use the club and relied on his fists. He was able to tie up 4 scarecrows, and with the help of the skill Battle Helper, he could handle the scarecrows in a one-on-one situation. He pinned the scarecrow to the ground and attacked its chest continuously until its core was revealed. He was about to destroy the core but stopped after the scarecrow activated sparring level 3. He wanted the scarecrows to get stronger, since the stronger they got, the stronger he would become. Later, he opened his eyes, trying to recall how many times he died after the scarecrow activated sparring level 3. He couldn't believe it. Every time he died, the scarecrow was using a different martial art, and he questioned how many martial arts the scarecrows knew. The scarecrow approached him, this time taking a fist fight stance. Hyunwoo was excited by this because he didn't think he would die in a fist fight. He attacked the Scarecrow first and was pushing it back. The Scarecrow activated sparring level 4 and attacked Hyunwoo's eyes. Hyunwoo flew back complaining about his eyes, but the Scarecrow wasn't done and it proceeded to bite him. He died, and at the end of his ninth death, Hyunwoo realized 3 facts. 1. The Scarecrows couldn't increase the difficulty past sparring level 4, which is why he wasn't noticing any new patterns in the Scarecrow's attacks. 2. The Scarecrows had a fixed pattern of moving, and if there were any differences then it would stop to correct its movements. 3. There's no need for him to destroy the Scarecrows. If they take a certain amount of damage, they would stop moving. So there is no need for him to totally destroy the Scarecrows. After realizing these 3 things, Hyunwoo was able to defeat all the Scarecrows and clear the quest Friend of a Beginner. This made him feel good, and he fell to the ground due to exhaustion. All he wanted to do was fight monsters on the same level as him, but that's not the type of place hell is. He questioned why the quest was named Friend of a Beginner when the difficulty was not something a regular beginner could handle. As compared to learning something, it was more like hell was beating the fighting techniques into him. He stood up and decided to check his rewards for the quest before he returned to the real world. He opened the silver chest, and the quality of his reward was increased due to the effects of the title SSS rank Good Luck, and he obtained what looked like a golden wrapping cloth. The wrapping cloth was the legendary item Celestial Cradle, and it accelerates growth and fully restores any damage in the body. Hyunwoo understood the part about the cradle restoring damage in the body, but he couldn't understand what the growth acceleration was about. He was happy that he got another legendary item, but he didn't know how to use it. He questioned if he wrapped the cradle around his head if it would make him smarter. He wrapped the cradle around his head but quickly took it off because of embarrassment, and he was glad that no one was around to see what he just did. He continued to observe the cradle, and he realized that when he died and was revived he would be in perfect condition, meaning the cloth wouldn't be useful to him. He decided to sell the cradle when he returned to the real world, and opened his inventory to store it away. The egg he obtained when he was dismantling mosquitoes caught his attention, and because the cradle mentioned growth, he figured it might work on eggs. He took the egg out of his inventory and wrapped the cradle around it. After a while, nothing had happened, and he questioned if the cradle didn't work on eggs. He decided to stop waiting and just sell the cradle when he returned back to the real world, but suddenly the egg started hatching. Hyunwoo became concerned. He hadn't thought about what he would do if a monster that wanted to kill him came out of the egg. But it was too late. The egg had already hatched, and a fairy-looking monster came out. The monster was smaller than what he imagined, and he reached out his finger to pet it, and suddenly the fairy grabbed his finger and bit him. In shock, he threw the fairy into the ceiling and complained to the system for giving him a monster that wanted to eat him as a reward. The fairy stood up and told Hyunwoo that she was hungry. Hyunwoo took out a piece of candy from his pocket and asked the fairy if she wanted to eat the candy instead. The fairy refused and pointed at Hyunwoo. Hyunwoo allowed the fairy to drink his blood, and a while later he got irritated that the fairy was still drinking his blood, and he asked her to stop. She stopped and helped him stop the bleeding. Afterwards, she complained about the taste of Hyunwoo's blood only being somewhat satisfying and asked him to bring out her dessert. This irritated Hyunwoo, and he grabbed her, asking her to say those words again. Realizing that her life is in danger, she thanked Hyunwoo for letting her drink his blood. Hyunwoo decided to let go of her and introduced himself. He asked her for her name, and after thinking long and hard about it, she couldn't remember. The only thing she remembered is that she was supposed to appear at the end. This confused Hyunwoo, and he asked her if she was some kind of superhero that appeared in the end to save the world. She replied with a smile, "No, I promise to eat all living organisms when the world ends." This didn't make sense to Hyunwoo. This small fairy creature was saying it is going to devour all living organisms when the world ends. Hyunwoo suddenly remembered that his blood was poisonous. The poison was so potent that it melted a goblin's arm, but she was fine after drinking his poisonous blood. He couldn't use the skill battle helper to defeat her because she wasn't hostile to him. He didn't know what her skill level is, and it looked like he wouldn't be able to just leave her behind. His only other option was to take her as a pet. Since he decided to take her in as a pet, he gave her the name Renian, which she accepted because it sounded similar to Agent of the Apocalypse in Pixie tongue. Hyunwoo then asked Renian to promise to never eat a human. Renian asked if that included him, and Hyunwoo replied that he didn't care about others, but she should never try to eat him, and if Renian was hungry to the point where she could die, he gave her permission to eat another human as long as it's not him, and in exchange for her promising he would give her some blood. Renian accepted, and after drinking Hyunwoo's blood again, she asked him why the scarecrows were destroyed. Hyunwoo explained that they were destroyed for his victory, but he noticed something strange. One of the scarecrows had been ripped in two. He recalled the battle with the scarecrows and came to the conclusion that he wasn't the one that ripped the scarecrow in two. Suddenly, a prompt appears informing him that the additional trait Valiant Energy had been added to Battle Helper. He picked up a scarecrow to test out the additional trait, and to his surprise, he destroyed the scarecrow with a single punch. Seeing what Hyunwoo had just done, Renian wanted to try too, and she replicated the move on another scarecrow. The other scarecrows were activated, and they surrounded Hyunwoo, but instead of recognizing him as an opponent, they recognized him as a superhuman, and they directed him to the corner of the room that was packed with debris. Hyunwoo started clearing out the debris, and as he cleared, Renian could smell something delicious. Hyunwoo continued clearing the debris and came across a skeleton. Renian took a bone from the skeleton and started eating it. Hyunwoo took the bone from her before she could finish it and placed it back where it was. There was also a letter that read, "It's been 3 years since the level rose to nightmare." The situation only worsened. Children who were born in the potent dust died. Hunters started dying out. Hope faded away and humanity went extinct. Hyunwoo was stunned. According to the letter and the message he saw when he entered, hell is the future of the real world, and for high-ranking ability users to die out as well showed the dangerous monsters that were about to appear. Hyunwoo couldn't figure out who left the letter behind, and Renian, who was looking through the belongings of the skeleton, found a return stone and showed it to Hyunwoo. The return stone looked different from the one that brought him to hell, so he asked Renian to give it to him so he could observe it. Renian handed him the return stone, and suddenly it started glowing brightly. Once the light had disappeared, the return stone was gone, and Hyunwoo had a strange tattoo on his hand. A message appeared telling him that the stars were watching him, and a veil of darkness started surrounding Hyunwoo. He tried to get away, but it was too late. He was in a strange place with nothing around. He started calling out for Renian, and suddenly a message appeared informing him that advancing Star Borrow had recognized his absorption of the star fragment. However, the Star Borrow became disappointed after seeing Hyunwoo and forfeited the fragment and left. This irritated Hyunwoo and he gave the star the middle finger. In anger, Hyunwoo started hitting the message that had popped up and accidentally lifted a lock. The system then explained that the owners of stars are beings who have absolute control over their own territory somewhere in space. These beings place their absolute power into fragments and lend them out. They do so in hopes that their kin will use this power to become rulers and expand their territory. Hyunwoo was in possession of one of these fragments. Because of this, the stars wished for him to become their kin. Hyunwoo realized that the return stone Renian found earlier was the fragment the system was talking about, and after the explanation, all of the stars that wanted Hyunwoo to be their kin appeared. A prompt appeared asking Hyunwoo to choose the star he wanted to follow. However, he refused. Even if the system wanted him to choose, he wouldn't, since he knew nothing about the stars. So one by one, the system introduced the stars to Hyunwoo. The Shattering Star Gull, an absolute ruler who laughs behind a plotty mastermind. He rules over the masses with daggers, poison, and conspiracies, while staying behind the scenes. The Waking Star Bird is the father of all grief and melancholy. He commands an army of the dead and enjoys watching despair after destruction. Starving Star Yogyalim is a snake of greed and desire. The citizens of his territory are in a constant state of starvation, and his wish is to swallow the world. Whispering Star Monstrel instigates in the light and deceives in the dark, and she can deceive any powerful being to kneel at her feet. Conquering Star Aaron is a loser who advances with fire and slaughters his enemies with steel. He wants to burn the world with meaningless hate and resentment, and he would be satisfied to rule over ashes. Hyunwoo became concerned. All of the stars sounded like they needed therapy. The system informed him that the stars become interested in those similar to them. Hyunwoo couldn't believe it. The system was basically saying he had the nature of a conspiracist with a personality disorder and is a greedy attention seeker who also has intermittent explosive disorder. Hyunwoo burst into a fit of rage, proving that the star's assessment of his personality was correct. But even if he was all those things, somehow he thought he was better than the stars. He asked the stars what would change if he chose them, and one by one the stars showed him glimpses of what they had to offer. And again a message appears asking him to choose a star. Hyunwoo still couldn't choose, thinking about the fact that he was in hell. There is no way the stars would give something away for free, and he asked them if there was a price he needed to pay. The system explained that the stars raise their kin, and their kin will serve as a proxy for them. Hyunwoo then asked if he had to choose right now. The system explained that choosing a star is a rare opportunity, as he would receive their acknowledgement and continue to succeed in hell. His growth would become much faster if he chose a star. However, Hyunwoo didn't care, since there was nothing the stars could give him right now. A prompt appears informing him that the stars are feeling displeased with his arrogance. From the prompt, Hyunwoo concluded that the stars were telling him to watch his mouth, but this irritated him. He was happy that the stars were willing to grant him power just so he would follow them, but they were the ones that came to him. He didn't seek them out. This is his first time hearing about stars, so he couldn't just trust them out of nowhere. Even a used car dealer wouldn't be trying so hard to sell him in a deal. The conquering Star Aaron lost interest in Hyunwoo and left. The other stars decided that it would be best to give Hyunmoo more time to think about their offer, and the black veil was lifted. The Whispering Star Monstro stayed behind and awakened a portion of Hyunmoo's abilities. He awakened the legendary skill Domination. She was giving him a pretty big bribe to choose her, but something was strange. If the stars are beings who could give out legendary skills that easily, why couldn't they stop the real world from becoming hell? There definitely would have been someone other than him who caught their eye. If the difficulty was on a scale where high-ranking hunters couldn't stop the real world from becoming hell, then it's possible that the stars were the ones who created hell. It looked like he would have to do more research about the stars. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video then hit the like button.